basically going to start by just kind of, suppose kind of like reading out the kind of preamble of what we're on about, and it's just that the notion of free has become something that many involved in our industry take for granted. For giving away tracks or albums or to playing gigs, providing you music for free has become a choice, and huge number of acts have chosen freely, perhaps of their own will, to make. But just as there's no such thing as a free lunch, there's also no such thing as free music. There are costs at every stage of the process, yet acts seem willing to pick up the bill in their career in the hope of making fans from the exposure and furthering their career for the future. It works for some bands, but doesn't work for everyone. So-called free services like Spotify and their streaming brothers and sisters also muddy the water as punters get their music for free and the tech lads and lasses augment their bottom line. But the people that make the music make do with sense rather than euros or dollars. Time for some questions and opinions that we hope will come out here. It's going to be a panel of strong opinions, hopefully. What's the real value of free? At what stage does free become a cost? Does providing your music for free make you a schmuck or smart? What happens when a band moves from free to paid for? Can you really make a career from providing your music for free? Is free just a fad, or is free here to stay? I'm going to start by just asking each one of the panelists to give me a short kind of like Twitter-style biography of who they are and what they do. Starting with, who's the end? Dev at the end.
My name is Dev Sherlock. I'm with the Hype Machine. We are, for lack of a better description, a global aggregator of music blogs. There's thousands of passionate music fans out there writing about undiscovered and new artists every day, and we sort of compile it all into one place. We are essentially a music discovery tool, but because it shows sort of what heat and what's buzzing on music blogs, we've also found a lot of industry like A&R, talent bookers, club bookers are all sort of using Hype Machine now as well.
Cool, thank you very much. Darren?
I'm Darren, I'm the head of digital marketing for the PS Group. My job, I guess, day to day is to run campaigns for people like anyone from, I don't know, Carl Barat, We Are Scientists, top to bottom really, kind of get involved with all kinds of artists at all kind of levels, the PS signs, but I also work across the group, so we also get involved with things like the issues of Spotify services, digital deals, YouTube, and so on.
Great, thank you very much. Dave?
Hey, my name is David. I work at SoundCloud. SoundCloud's a social sound sharing platform. So we help enable sound creators to share their sounds across the web, maybe in the context of sharing it to websites, social networks, along with blogs and press, and wherever you need to get that your sounds across the web. Hopefully we can help to enable a creator to share what they want to create.
Cool, thank you very much. Josh?
My name's Josh. I run a UK music blog called Cracking the Road, which started 18 months ago and kind of has grown from there. Now got 16 writers in the UK, 2 in Europe and 2 in the States. Yeah, that's
cool. Thank you very much. So we've got tech, we've got bloggers, we've got PS. We've got, like it's a good gathering of people up here. And you know, I suppose the first thing they're supposed to throw out is like when the panel here talk of kind of free music, do they basically kind of go, oh, not again? Or do they kind of realize that this is an argument that's kind of has to be had at every stage? I mean, when we talk earlier on, I mean, we were talking beforehand, and I was kind of going through a number of kind of, I suppose, articles of late and kind of like thoughts of late which kind of informed this panel. There's a fact that like someone like Frank Ocean, who's one of the Odd Future Boys, putting out a 64-track compilation called the Lonnie Bro Collection. And it's not 64 throwaway tracks, like a lot of it is really, really good. Then there's a whole load of articles which appeared in the quietest of late from bands like the Icarus Line, and there was someone else who was named kind of, they're signed to Male Bonding, about like how hard it is right now to make a living from music, how hard, like that they've got like part-time jobs, they've got to keep part-time jobs, or in some cases full-time jobs as well as making music. Then I suppose there's one thing which has kind of come up again lately, and it's kind of like it's this evergreen saw. It's a whole area of minuscule royalties from a streaming service like Spotify. Spotify are the bad boys and all of this, you know, they're the ones who got like all the bad press. And like, is it the case of like, that labels and acts should do like some labels have done and withdraw their entire catalog from Spotify, or is it the case that you shut the fuck up and stop whinging? This is the way things are. Get on with it. You give your music to Spotify, you get 0.0001 cent for your play. Get used to it. Find your music somewhere else. Sell your body. Or another thing which is the niche economy right now. You know that like you have to be smart. Acts have to be smart. Yes, you have to kind of like give away a couple of free tracks, almost like a chef will give away in a musée bouche in a restaurant, in the hope you're going to shell out for the 9-course tasting menu. Or is there other ways of approaching it? And then there's a book which was recently written by Robert Levine called Free Ride. It's about how the internet is destroying the culture business and how the culture business can fight back. I mean, it's obvious that free has become part of the agenda. Free has become part of the conversation. Like, throwing it open here, and like just like what we're going to do for the next 45 minutes is just going to discuss. If you want to jump in, just grab the microphone and jump in. But like, I mean, is free here to stay, or is there? Can we see the genie being put back in the bottle?
bust the Spotify myth first and explain that.
Yeah, let's get that one out of the way, shall we?
Go kick Spotify, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I must admit, I get slightly tired of the Spotify argument. I mean, it feels like people comparing apples and oranges. You know, this whole thing of, I mean, firstly, all the numbers that get punted around are 9 times out of 10 rubbish. You know, it's bloggers quoting bloggers, none of whom have a frigging idea of what the actual numbers involved are.
Fabulous.
Yeah, you know, and which is a terrible thing that happens a lot on the internet. You know, but everyone's talking about it, but no, you know, very few are in actual possession of the facts. And also, I think, you know, Spotify is an environment that is basically akin to radio. You know, it's people selecting to listen to stuff. I think Spotify, personally, you know, it generates a huge amount of revenue. I know PS are enormous fans of it. You know, we work very closely with them. And to be perfectly honest as well, on a slightly more personal note, it's like Spotify are really good guys to work with. You know, they're a great service. They respond. Independent music on Spotify is actually disproportionately more listened to than major label stuff. And they understand that, and they work with us, and they're very responsive. So I do defend them on a number of counts. I really tire of the kind of bashing them on the monetary side. I think they're growing really well. You know, they have taken a massive spike from Facebook. It's free users. I wouldn't think we should presume that that means that they've got a massive leap in their business. It just means they're paying more to people. They're not earning more back yet. But yeah, the kind of bashing Spotify thing, it just doesn't, for me, it doesn't stack up. And I have to ask a question where it's like, if you think that streaming media is not the way forward, what do you think is? Because it isn't, you know, downloads aren't filling the gap. You know, there's the stats recently where it's kind of, downloads have gone up X%, but CDs have gone down a far greater percent. So they're not filling the gap. And these streaming services that permeate throughout are definitely there to, you know, have every potential of filling that. So, yeah, I don't, you know, it's a lot of people talking with largely ignorant views on the monetary side of Spotify. I think, unfortunately for Spotify, they have deals in place with various labels that are done under NDA, particularly the majors, and I suspect, therefore, they're not in a position to tell everyone what they pay, and that's not Spotify's fault. If you do a deal under NDA, then obviously you can't reveal the details of that. It's not ideal, and I think Spotify get hit with the stick for that one. But I think the reality is it was actually the majors that demanded the NDA, and therefore perhaps we should be beating them with the stick a bit more.
I also pay for my Spotify account, so it's a place where I'm actually paying for music. So if you think in the context of how that grows in terms of scaling of numbers, or what that potential has in forms of a revenue stream, and as Darren said already, it is a major revenue stream for themselves at PS. So yeah, I'm not too keen on the figures brought across there, but.
Is it not a case of artists sort of being held hostage to an extent because it's take our small rates or you know, you don't exist?
Because, I mean, an interesting thing, I mean, Darren, I want to kind of ask you about this one. You know, I mean, one of the best services I use online is e-music, you know, and I know, like, there's certain PS labels have moved away from that, and, like, I mean, have killed it off, you know, and I would have thought that, like, getting money from e-music when I'm paying my, like, whatever it is, $16.99 a month for downloads, I mean, surely that is more work to the bottom line than the Spotify payment.
I think the way in which independent labels are, it sounds like a bit of a cop out, but it's kind of like PS distributes labels. We don't order it. We can't tell labels what to do. If the labels want to drop out from an e-music deal, that may not even be what we think is the best thing for them to do.
I'm going to say something here now that's going to go completely over your heads, but everyone here in the audience is going to kind of laugh. Should I be Vincent Brown in their asses? Okay, that's a cop out. That's a total cop out. I mean, like, do you reckon when labels come to you, Darren, and kind of like say, should we do the e-music deals or not? What do you say to them?
They don't ask me that question, so I don't answer it. I'm the digital, you know, head of digital marketing. I'm not the head of digital business.
Like, I mean, when you kind of hear of labels, kind of like means certain bigger ones moving away from e-music, do you think just as lads, you're mad? You should stay with them. There's money coming from here.
Personally, I just think you should be wherever you can make money. I don't really subscribe to this kind of pulling out of this service and being on that service. It's worth noting there's a lot of labels, you know, there's a little fact that people have missed with. There's been a few high-profile stories lately of particularly American labels pulling out of Spotify and really sticking the knife in, and everyone missing at the same time that a lot of labels that have pulled out with great PR from Spotify are actually still on Mog, Rdio, Deezer, and other streaming services, none of whom are paying a huge amount more, I wouldn't have thought, because there's a model there, and the model will always have around the same rates, you know. So there's, yeah, I mean, undoubtedly, you know, labels are, you know, being a bit haphazard here on what they want to get into and what they want to drop out of. Personally, I'm not sure why people dropped out the e-music side. I think there was a general kind of resentment to the deals they'd done with the majors, because it was definitely a kind of pivotal point with e-media, with e-music rather, where they decided they were going to court the majors and sort of up prices and various other things. I don't know. I can only assume if ever I see a deal fall through, it's because the terms have become ridiculous. And there are services that try and push ridiculous terms, and we don't do deals with them. So, and there has to be a decision made about what's in the best interests of labels. And I think generally across the board, it's not a PS thing, it's just across the board. People are trying to be more proactive, because since the days of Napster, labels were totally reactive and spent a vast amount of time saying, God, no, we're not going to use that, we won't engage this, we won't do that. And I think over time, everyone's had to have a long think about this. And now, the general view is that you should try and get involved with these things, because you don't know what is going to happen. You could see downloads continue to dwindle, you could see physical fall right off. And if you're not on the streaming services working to develop your presence in that area, then that could be a whole chunk of revenue you're getting no access to. Yeah.
Devin, Josh, as bloggers, how do you view this? How do you view the charge that sometimes when bloggers talk about, like, Spotify's as the bad boys, they don't have their facts right, they don't know what they're talking about?
Oh, personally, I don't use Spotify. I don't know how many people here use Spotify.
This is Ireland, we can't use Spotify. This is like, there's a big...
Oh, there's no Spotify in Ireland. Fair enough.
Well, I do use Spotify, and I like it for the amount of access, but as a music fan, it doesn't really satisfy me. I mean, I feel like I'm not supporting the music. It's back in the day, you would have to, music sales were as much about curiosity and satisfying your curiosity as they were about anything else. And if someone says, oh, you have to hear Pet Sounds, you have to hear Bitches Brew, you would go out and buy those records because you had to know them to be in the conversation. Now, you're just going to go on Spotify, listen to them, go, right, heard it. Now, I know what's going on. And it's the same thing with new records. Yeah. I want to hear, have you heard the new St. Vincent record? Oh, well, let's go stream it and listen to it. And I think you're losing a lot of sales there as well. Yeah.
But like in terms of losing sales to streaming and losing I suppose sales to kind of taste services being provided by blogs as well, where you give away a track, is this something you think the two, like especially the two bloggers for a start, do you think this is something that acts are going to have to suck it up? Forget it, like this is the way things are right now. You've got to make your living from other ways. If you have to get a job in the post office putting stamps on letters, so be it.
Yeah, I think entirely. As Spotify as a model, I don't know too much about it financially, so I can't comment on that. But my main gripe with Spotify is that I think it promotes this very impersonal relationship with music, and it very much encourages people to sit behind a laptop and listen to music, which I think when artists are recording music, they aren't recording it for someone to be sitting there and putting it on in the background while they're doing other things. They're recording music for people to really engage with, and I think Spotify really detracts from that, the music as a concept, and it just kind of, so many people just kind of drift by with it.
To me, though, it feels like the end result of like a long, slow process of media breaking down. I mean, you used to buy, long players where you'd have to sit and listen through it, or even a cassette where, if you like track 4, you're either going to sit and fast forward for a fucking long time, or you're just going to sit through the record. And then you got CDs, and then you could skip, and everyone goes skip, 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 skip. And then you get digital media, and then you're in iTunes cherry picking the tracks you like. And you're seeing track downloads go through the roof because people can't be asked to buy the album because they know there's like 6 fillers and they're not going to pay for it. So then when you get to Spotify, it's merely a continuation of that. And that's not a good thing, don't get me wrong. I've got a 3,000 strong vinyl collection. I love vinyl, and I enjoy the product of it. And I miss things like liner notes, which I think are a phenomenal boost to when you're enjoying a record. If you know that, I don't know, Bob Clearmountain mastered it, and you can go off and find the other shit that he did and get all into that. None of that is present on digital media. But unfortunately, that's the way it is. That's the way it's gone. When the wheels came off this and everyone could freely download stuff, people were, gorging on it and getting as much as they could, and suddenly it became about quantity, not quality, and all of these things. So to hold sort of Spotify up and go, you've personally fucked the entire thing, because now we're all skipping through tracks and, treating this with ADHD, I think is kind of, holding them responsible for like a very long decay that's kind of kicked in here. And I think it's quite sad. I would also say, though, I mean, in something of a response to Dev, it's kind of, by the same token, I think there's a way in which, Spotify does a discovery, and I think it's a nice way to be able to, listen to an artist and make a judgment on whether you like them. Now, if you do like them, then maybe you will go and buy the vinyl because you're a vinyl head, or maybe you'll just stump for a ticket and go and see them live. But there's an immediacy and an access point to it that I think is very valuable. I think it's very easy to sort of hang all of the wrongs that's kind of accumulated with digital music on not just Spotify but streaming services. Let's not forget they're not the only one. Yeah. And kind of beaten with that. And I think we can all hold up a service and go, you're the new devil, you're the new enemy and all of this. And it's like, you know what? At times I just sit and think, you fucking did it to yourselves, people. We all started downloading. We all thought it didn't matter because no one would know and all of these kinds of things. And this is where it ended up. It's not a nice thing to say, but I think it's kind of true.
Have you something to add there? Do you have something to add there? No, just want to move it away from Spotify. Let's leave Spotify alone then, for a time being, because let's leave them alone, okay? And moving on to the bands, so the actual people who create this music in the time, David, you were on the panel yesterday. We were talking about, the geek panel, and we were talking about how fast technology is developing, and artists don't develop at that kind of pace. So to an artist looking at the way things are going, and looking at what Darren is kind of saying about the fact that he's right, everything has changed so fast. The way we consume media is just a bam, bam, bam. It's gone from minutes to seconds to milliseconds. To an artist looking at this, to all the panel. Do you actually ever when they give a free track to you to put on your blog? When you see getting kind of a lot of coverage, a lot of traction on Hype Machine because every blog is kind of covering them. Bands that's something the bands are giving away for free. Is it a case of this is the reality, lads, accept it, or do you ever kind of think where's it going to come from? How are they going to pay for this? Where is that going to happen? How's that going to happen? Have the economics changed so much that everyone has to accept this is the way it is now?
I think there's a more complex, there's a simple answer to that, which is you have no choice but to give away something for free. But the more complex answer is how much do you want to give away? I spoke with a lot of bands today and yesterday during the speed sessions, and I've asked them all, we have a new EP, we have a new album, what are you going to do with it? Are you going to give it away? Well, we're going to give away a couple songs, some of them are going to give away the whole thing. I thought that was a mistake to give away the whole thing. An interesting stat I saw last year, Moby, with his last album, put one song out for free, sent it to blogs, put it on fan sites, put it on his own site. This song, no charge. Everyone can have this track. The rest of the album you pay for. His sales on iTunes were higher for that song than any other track on the record, even though anyone could have had it for free. So, I don't know what the complete answer is, but I definitely would say don't give everything away.
When you're sorting out campaigns, Darren, for bands, is this question obviously comes up, okay, what are you going to do regarding feeding the bloggers, feeding that never-ending mass of bloggers who want something for free? Do you ever advise bands not to give away tracks for free, hold back stuff? Or is this now kind of one of the marketing things you have to do?
I think, to me, it's not really about the free bit. It's about a value transaction. When you give something away, if I'm giving a track to a blog to give away for free, then I'm not getting nothing back. I'm getting a hell of a lot of publicity for my artist, and you don't just give it away for nothing. And I do agree with what Dev said to an extent about giving things away for free. And I think if you give away a whole album, sometimes you do run a risk of making it look worthless by giving it away. But if you give it away and you're giving it away in return for something, like you are getting emails and you're capturing a fan base to then speak to further, over time, then you are getting something back from that. And I think it's too easy to look at free as just like free as in not paid and there's nothing coming back to you for it. But that isn't it at all. We, probably going back 18 months, we used to do a lot of the kind of email for media stuff where your opening gambit on a campaign would be, here's the track, give us an email. And obviously the reason for that is by collecting the emails, we can then market to you. We can then get in touch with you, connect with you more as a fan and try and, get you sold on, the awesome album that we're going to be putting out.
Can I ask a question here at this stage? How many people in the audience have given their email to get a free track? How many people who have given their email to give a free track use an email that they never use for anything else except downloading free tracks? Okay, so okay, just bear that one in mind. Sorry, Dev.
Yeah, I hate giving away my email for a track. I'll gladly tweet for a track. I'll Facebook like. I'll do whatever else.
And this is the question then, like, how much value is there in fake emails? Will you even give your email yourself, you know? I mean, I'm just interested in that kind of thing, because you're right. You know, when you give away something for free, you're not giving away for free. You're looking for something back in return. You may be looking for Josh to write about you on the blog. You're looking for coverage. You're looking maybe that, hey, some promoter in Carlo will hear your track and give you a gig in Carlo, you know? But the email thing, I've never got that bit.
No, the worst part of that is after you get like 3 or 4 emails from them and you realize you didn't really care for the track in the first place, is you have to go back and unsubscribe, and you just go, oh, is the band going to see this?
But there's a couple of things to it where it's like, I don't actually do email for media anymore. The reason is everyone does email for media, and I think there's a definite, fatigue kicks in. It's the usual thing where, like, when everyone's doing it, it's not special anymore, and it's probably just quite annoying. Hence, I've also done the sluice email that you use to give them and just say, look, I'll give that and get the track and whatever else. I've also never given away an email for media with a track without giving someone an opportunity to hear the track first. Because you're absolutely right. If I go, I've got a new track, give me your email, your first question is, why? You know, I've never heard this song. I have no idea if I like it or not. So it does change. And certainly in my campaigns in the last year, as soon as I saw the kind of abundance of topspin email for media widgets that just kind of flooded the internet at a certain point, that's when we immediately switched and actually started using this guy's stuff more, where we were doing kind of SoundCloud stuff with tabs on Facebook, whereas if you click like, so you become a fan on Facebook or whatever, or the tweet for a track, which you've done as well, but found frankly to be sort of less effective in the value of beyond that. But it does always change, and I think we try really, or I try to sort of stay ahead of what everyone else is doing. And the minute I see everyone else doing the kind of like to access stuff, then we stop doing it. And lately, like with the way Facebook's just changed its whole open graph protocol, we're pretty much knocking the whole like us and get something on the head, because now fans can interact with you without having to click like anyway. So it's been rendered a bit pointless.
I think that comes back around to your original question, Jim, and how much do you give away for free? I think the access and the taste should be free. And I think that's sort of what Hype Machine's doing. I think it was what SoundCloud is doing. I think it's what blogs do, is the discovery is free, and then if you like that, then, the food analogy you gave, if you like the slice of pizza, buy my whole pizza. Yeah. Someone like Frank Ocean giving away 64 tracks, that's sort of discouraging. It's almost like a case of who can shout the loudest.
But it's also
because I'm
like,
giving away so much stuff that he's changed, he's raised the bar for everybody else.
I think Frank Ocean's kind of an interesting one of a younger generation of creators, because we have so much tools there to create on a much quicker scale. And you brought that point, like some people take like 6 years, like yesterday we was talking about. But someone like Frank Ocean, they're going through tracks on a day-by-day basis, and this is how they create. Like, it is not just related to audio; it's related to photos and videos. Like, we're a generation of people who know how to create, and we want to share with people quickly. So technology's kind of allowed that to happen, and to him, it's kind of put in a position where, like, a manager like Christian Clancy with Frank Ocean can then learn about an artist, find out more, get people involved, and now look, like, I remember there's something about Frank Ocean, he put a blog out about being on a plane to go work with Kanye and Jay-Z. So it's kind of had a point to him where there's a value to it, and a transaction to build people in. It's a hell of a lot of content, but he's a kid, and that's kind of how he works, and that's just how his brain's brought up in that kind of generation.
I think it's worth pointing out, I think the Lonnie Bro collection, I'm not even sure if it was emanated from Frank. It's all the demos and stuff he did when he was kind of retained to Def Jam. So it's not, I just think it just as a, it's, sorry, a bit picky one, but it's kind of, Frank's given away a lot of stuff, but I think the Lonnie Bro collection is, either it didn't emanate from Frank, but it was certainly a guy just kind of casting off the stuff he'd done before the things that have got him in the spotlight now. So it's not like he's positioned a 64-track release as like,
no, that's a release, yeah.
Yeah, I think obviously the 64-track release gets quoted quite a bit, but what a lot of people don't also look into as well, that he'd given away a lot of stuff before that. In fact, all of Odd Future had. They'd given away 16 full albums, over 320 tracks they'd given away for free via their website. And there's no way they would have got to the position they are in now if they had said, right, here's one track from this album, buy the rest of the album. But because they were giving full albums away for free, people were really engaging with the entire record. And now, they're on planes with Jay-Z and Kanye and playing the biggest festivals in the world. Tyler's just signed to XL.
Does anyone know how many records Tyler actually sold, though?
Yes, how many did he sell?
Not very many.
Not that many.
Yeah.
Did he sell 10,000?
I think it was just about that.
Okay, so I mean, there's a case where blog love, blog hype doesn't turn into sales.
But that's just
Yeah,
based
I mean,
on record
to be
sales.
fair though, Odd Future were not, you know, an unknown indie band. They had a lot of muscle behind them. They had people from major labels in LA and managers and
Very
people.
good manager.
Yes, yes.
Just a quick, you said something really interesting there, like David, about you know that new generation thing in terms of sharing, getting stuff out straight away. That like, you know, there's a new generation of musicians who basically quite happily record a track today, it's out tomorrow, it's gone out there, and it's gone out for free. Do we think in many ways then that like musicianship will become? It's really interesting. There was a piece in Wired magazine last year when they asked a number of people. The only person I remember was the editor of the NME, was one of the people they asked. What's the future of music? In a very simple thing, what's the future of music? And one of the correspondents said something back, and he said, I may have quoted this before at Harvard this year, but he said, you know, talking about the future of the music industry is a bit like talking about the future of the poetry industry. That it's becoming a situation where the talk of music business isn't such. And when you talk there about, like I was thinking about this, when you talk there about like people sharing stuff, getting it out straight away, that many people involved in music will never make a living from it.
I think there's a couple of interesting points you raised there. It's just like the thing of them people sharing is then it can come a two-way conversation of other people creating with you as well. So it's not just like if there is a whole generation of people who know how to create music, then they can create music on top of your music, like remixes and remix competitions being big, like crowdsourced projects. So there's a whole new generation to that. But again, like in a proper music context of when you want to commercially sell, there's a difference between the two. There's these people who just want to create content and they just want to share and it's fun. And then there's people who want to commercially exploit it. Now, it's context. That's what it is. So if you're trying to commercially exploit something, then you're going to find the right point. You're going to build a campaign, you can build a team and go from there and position of when you want to put that certain content online and go from there. There's two very different types of people. And then I think what's really cool about these people who just want to create more fun content is there are people out there to interact, and it's fun to create stuff. It's fun to share a photo of what I've created.
Yeah, but they react, but they don't actually go out and buy the things that we've just discovered with Tyler and Odd Future. You know, when
you went for record sales with Tyler. Like Tyler and that are playing like festivals around the world is where their form of income is. There's a whole different point you raised in the list of cases you said down there. There was one about it kind of went across to like niches. And I think that's really interesting of how we can kind of find our niches, and blogs are amazing for that. They're like our filters of the web, and having this content get onto their websites help people talk, focus in on these filters on the web and then find out about bands. And then it's the point of when a band turns something into something which is exploitable. So from now it's not just about the music exploitable, it's merchandise, it's other interesting products you can make around that. It's touring as well. So it's being a bit smarter about what you try and put forward, your brand. So try and think about what brands sell and the merchandise around that. It's not, there's more to it.
That thing though about bands getting smarter, you know, like it's like I'm thinking, I suppose, a lot of the bands who've been kind of coming to the speed sessions here at Harbour and Class Heroes, you know, and you know we live here in Ireland, which is a small island off the coast off the European mainland, and it's like, you know, in many ways fine, the internet allows you to be like you're on a level playing field with everyone else, but in other ways you're not, because it's like, I mean, it's such a small industry here, it's a minuscule industry here, you know, that like they're looking at these bigger questions, the whole issue of free, the whole issue of kind of like the fact that they're not going to get a record deal that used to be the case before. The fact is that they're not going to make money from records as used to be the case before. The fact is it's going to be gigs. The fact is a small circuit here. You know, is this, again, I mean, and like, I want people to be realistic about this. You know, is it a case of like, look, get off this fucking small island, go somewhere else. You know what I mean? Or if you want to stay at home, you're going to have to learn, like, I mean, you're going to have to reduce your expectations in a way.
Yeah, I mean, I think the risk element nowadays is even greater than it ever has been. And that I think up-and-coming artists shouldn't expect to see a pretty much immediate return on any money they're putting into recording, into even playing gigs, because that's just not the way it's going at the moment. There's a band back in Newcastle who I've done a bit of work with in the past, and they put a single out on iTunes for 79p in 2 weeks. They had 36 downloads of it, and they came and said, well, that's pretty much got us nothing. There's no worth from that at all. And so they said, right, we'll just put it for free on our website. And within a week after, it had over 2,000 downloads of it. And they were far happier with that, with people just picking it up and downloading it and getting the music heard, than trying to get some form of pretty petty income back on what they'd spent on recording the track.
But like, you know, they've spent that money on recording. So like, you know, this goes back to this thing about like, I mean, a free lunch. That is it a case that like, you know, bands are going to have to spend that money and they may never earn it back?
I think there's this unrealistic fear that every band has now that if we don't give everything away for free, no one's going to be interested and no one's going to be downloading it. I mean, if you look at the smaller services like CD Baby and TuneCore and Bandcamp and all of those, they bumped up over $1 billion in sales in music and merch in 2010. People want to spend money on indie musicians and their music and support. So, I mean, don't be afraid and think that if I don't give away my stuff, no one's going to be interested and no one's going to listen to me.
Am I supposed to say something now? So I got a moment there when everyone was looking at me.
I could see your hand reaching for the microphone and said, I'll give him 2 more seconds.
No, I just, I think, you know, it's just as Dev was saying that, I was kind of sitting there and just thinking a lot of it to me is about strategy, and it's a very, very kind of ugly word to use around, you know, artistry, which is what music is, but, you know, the strategy there is, you know, is everything. It's what you do and why you do it. So it's kind of interesting, you know, in the context of where we're trying to kind of summarize where free might work or might not. And the truth is, you know, it's how you do it and what you're getting back for it. And in the same way as, you know, I'm kind of curious because there's been, you know, a couple of instances lately of bands kind of wholesalely kind of rejecting the kind of accepted models to go forward. Woo Life are probably quite a good one, where they didn't do any interviews, they didn't release any photos, and they kind of actively shunned any attempt to cover them. And they got into this kind of hilarious bidding war based on their complete, you know, unwillingness to cooperate, and generated a huge amount of hype simply because their strategy had just been to totally reject all of the current ways of doing it. They ran everything themselves, they set themselves up as a kind of quasi-cult, and, you know, and away they went. And it worked. They were kind of on the front cover of Les An Rock in France. They had the enemy just absolutely pissing their pants for them.
Yeah,
but
they also had a really smart Manchester dude behind them as well. I mean, in terms of
yes, they do. Yeah, they've got a guy. Their manager is he
runs an agency. But
he runs a very, very good marketing agency. So it's not an idiot backing them. You know, they're not kind of the. You know, it reminds me a bit of the, was it Sandy Tom, that woman who's kind of like,
the woman
very
who
organically
recorded
found through
an
live
piss-stained
broadcasts.
basin.
Like,
The one who played the song.
Piss-stained basement.
yeah, and it was just ridiculous. You know, it was blatantly backed by a whole raft of PR and money, and it was just nowhere near the organic. You know, it's like if you believe the Arctic Monkeys kind of came from MySpace, then whatever, you know, but personally, I'm just too cynical. I don't buy into that stuff. Anyway, you know, it's about strategy, and I think it's, you know, it's how you go about these things. If you set yourself out to do these things, you know, the strategy that Woo Life took was good because they got everyone talking about them. You know, strategies of, you know, giving away stuff for free for Frank Ocean, good strategy, a lot of profile. Admittedly, as others have pointed out, back with very savvy management. You know, and you now got. What's his name? Trey Carter, is it, that manages Gaga? Was very public last week, going on about how he'd quite happily give away Gaga's next record for free.
And that's great to do when you've got like a
yeah, exactly. Kind of like,
it's like Radiohead and their tipping jar.
Yeah, you know. So it's, but there are strategies there, and in each instance, the strategy has worked. So it's kind of think of the strategy. Don't blindly follow the guy in front, going, I'm going to do an email for media, and then when I ask you why, you kind of shrug and go, well, that's what he does, you know, because that doesn't work. You have to think, what are you doing here? You know, I mean, when I was talking to people in the workshops, everyone was saying we're doing gigs, and I was saying, great, what are you doing to connect with fans at gigs? And most people were sort of, the answer was, you know, well, we play the gig, and that's it. And, you know,
We were on stage.
Yeah, you know, and I'm kind of like, and I
didn't fall off the stage.
Yeah, and I really remember what Benji from Pledge Music was saying, where he would, you know, sit there and at every gig he had something to give fans that came up to him. So a fan came up to him afterwards and was like, man, I really loved your gig. Benji had something to give them, and usually it was kind of, I think it was like a business card CD, and he would give them that, and that had like a couple of tracks, photo, whatever. So whoever you were, if you're a blogger or just a regular fan, you had something there, and it was a deeper point of connection. And Benji tells me that strategy worked really, really well, you know, and he's talked about it on panels where he's saying, you know, for every gig he's gone to, if he gets 10 people doing that at the end of the gig and he plays, you know, 100 gigs a year, then that's 1,000 people he's got, you know, more connected with him and, you know, building as he goes. So that's his strategy, and that strategy works for him, and it's a case of thinking of what will work for you. And you know, that's why I guess I do tire of the free argument, in one sense that it's always kind of held on the free versus paid, and it's just never that simple. It's free for what? You know, if it's free for exposure, if I give Josh a track, you know, exclusively, and then we get shitloads of hits, you know, to his site, and he does well out of it, we do well out of it because we've raised a load of profile or whatever, then that has worked. And it's not just to sit there and then go, well, we didn't get any money from that, it's kind of a bit simplistic.
I think it's interesting what you say as well about strategy, because I mean another area I suppose, and this is something I realised when I was saying this, that none of the panel here have a kind of a interest in this, but another kind of thing is that like we're all kind of talking here about like giving away music for free, but then there's the other thing that like I mean, a lot of bands will kind of say like, well, what about the gig situation, that like I mean when they're starting off they're playing gigs for free as well. Is this, and it's something that came up on the previous panel, says the biodiversity one, which was when we had a number of people talking about how diverse their careers were, like you'd a manager who was also running a festival, who's also running a record label, you know, and I asked the question, you know, like, well, you know, do you do stuff for free? And all of them kind of said, yes, of course, we still do stuff for free. Is it the same thing with a band? That like, you know, it's like, again, this is something you're all going to go, okay, what's he on about? But the people in the audience will kind of know it. Then in many ways, I mean, the bands have to be like almost like a job bridge thing, where they're doing it's like a terrible internship thing that's been brought in by the Irish government. That like in the case with bands as well, that they have to do stuff for free at the start to kind of keep it going. And that will include gigs as well. I didn't realize I'd be translating John Bridge and Vincent Brown.
Well, I don't know. I mean, it sounds a bit facile to kind of say, look, if your band is good, then you will be getting a response. And if your band is not good, blaming the giving away free for it not working and stuff like that is not really kind of fair. And I think it's, you know, it's I was saying this earlier, you know, I think it's always dismissed as quite a facile thing to say, of like, don't be a crap band. But you know, unfortunately, it is really true. You know, if you're resonating with people and they're getting excited about you and everything, then you can control things a bit more, because you've got them. You know, they're there and they want to, you know, get involved with what you're doing. And so I think, you know, to some extent, that element of like, you know, you should be doing this, you should be doing that, and you should be doing loads of things for free. Well, no, you shouldn't, not necessarily, you know, but you have to be trying to gauge the situation you're in and judge it accordingly, you know, and the strategies you use to try and build up from there are, you know, yours to work out, and there's many of them that you can take. But it's a case of looking around and saying, look, you know, this will work for us. If we're playing loads of gigs, fine, collect emails. Then, you know, you might be able to connect with people more. Maybe you don't gig at all. You might be a guy home in a bedroom, you know, doing things there, an electronic type producer. If that's the case, then you have to find an internet-led strategy to try and connect with people. But it's just thinking through what the strategy is and trying to see the bigger picture of it.
So just good music makes its way to the top. Like, it feels like someone who's just making music and they're in a position now where so many people have the ability to make music, feels like they're owed something in return for that, and they don't understand and enjoy the process. Like, there's always a point of just enjoying making music and realizing playing a gig, I've brought so many of my friends along and we're in this whole collaborative, like, we're just hanging out and having fun. That's like most coolest things are, and eventually when you're doing that and you're hanging out with cool people, there's a scene there, and eventually good music eventually comes out of it, and this guy comes to the top and it turns into a commercially exploitable product. Yeah, maybe music isn't at the point where people want to really take their wallets out or like go see you live. So maybe just shouldn't be making money.
I think going back to the gig aspect you're talking about before and doing free gigs, there's some guys down in Manchester who've just started doing quite an interesting concept. Kind of, a lot of I know I'm one of the people who, if I'm thinking about buying an album, I'll probably download it illegally first, listen to it and think, is that worth my money? If it is, yes, I'll go out and buy it on vinyl or maybe CD. And it's the same with the gigs. They put on free gigs, but yeah, then they put at the door on the way out, they have kind of a collection plate, and people pay what they think that gig was worth.
A bit like the collection plate at Mass.
Yeah, almost. It's kind of similar to that. I mean, obviously, it's slightly different. You're paying for something slightly different, but yeah, it's kind of people, especially as well. I think that they find they have fantastic results. People come along to this gig and go in for free. Maybe it's their favorite local pub anyway. They want to go in for a couple of drinks. They have a few drinks. They see a band and they think, oh, that band was really good. I'll give them 3 or 4 quid that I've got left in my pocket in change or whatever they've got on them, and it's actually working really well for these guys, which is, I think, is quite an interesting concept. But obviously, there's no guarantee there for any money at all. So,
I think people are inclined. I mean, if you give them something for free at a gig, if you play a free gig, have your CDs out for $2 on the way out. Who's not going to pay $2 when they've just had a free concert and a good night out?
If they like the band.
And they take home your music, and it has value because they've paid for it and they feel good about it.
Just a question and an observation before we kind of throw it out to the floor. You know, it strikes me that like a lot of things you're saying there, and you said this, a couple you said, Darren David said, like, I mean, about the fact that, like, you know, if your band is good enough, it will be found. That, like, I mean, like, regardless of the kind of like the free agenda, regardless of how things have changed in music industry, it's still the same as it was back in the 1960s when the Beatles were kicking off. That if you're good enough, you will be discovered and it will come on. So, like, I've got two questions. Like, one, would you agree with that statement? And two, when we come back for the 14th iteration of Hard Working Class Heroes in 2014, will we be having a panel like this, or will at that stage this be either one, something which should be consigned to the bowels of time, or two, something that's taken for granted we don't even discuss anymore?
That's a lot of question.
I know. Break it up. First one, kind of like the same as it ever was, no change. And the second of all, is this going to be still around in 5 years' time?
Yeah, I'd actually be really curious to know the kind of proportion to which you've got kind of, you know, like signed to unsigned artists, because I think that obviously we all, you know, would accept that there's a lot more music around now and a lot more music being made because the access to kind of means to record it and put it out and everything is a lot easier. But I'd actually be really curious to find out if the percentage is the same, because to me, it kind of feels the same. You know, it's just the numbers are bigger, but in terms of the kind of signed or, you know, successful to unsuccessful, I suspect it's probably about the same. And I didn't get much sleep last night, and I've already forgotten what the second bit of the question was.
Okay, that's actually it's interesting for me to say as well. I mean, it's something that came up in another panel that, like, you know, that we're almost saying in a caste system that, like, certain bands will have certain expectations. Some bands, they'll just be hobby bands. They never want to play more than a couple of gigs around, have their friends around them, maybe like, you mean, like, get off with some nice girl who came along to the gig via a Facebook ad. But then there's bands who are quite professional about things, who are kind of moving on. And then we've got like the further way down the road that maybe, like, me, the free agenda is going to tie into that in different kind of ways as well. Dave?
I mean,
I told you this panel would be good.
If you want to become, if you want to take that step and become, you know, we are a pro band and our stuff is going to be on iTunes and everywhere else, you pay for that. It's expensive. I mean, if you want to hire a PR, that's an expense. If you want to press up vinyl, that's an expense. If you want to upload your shit to iTunes, that costs money every year to keep that stuff up there for sale. So, you know, that again creates another question of, if I'm spending $200 a year just to keep my shit out there and I'm not selling it, why aren't I giving it away? Because then more people will hear it.
Okay, we'll throw that. Do I let you get a pass on my long, evolved question? I probably do, because I'm going to have to repeat it. So no, I think I'm going to ask questions to the floor instead. Okay, I'm going to question to the floor. I mean, the whole idea behind this panel was just really to kind of, I suppose, tease out some ideas regarding the free agenda and regarding free things. We're giving away your music for free right now, or even playing for gigs for free right now, impacts on bands. So we've covered some areas here. We probably left out some other areas. But, like, anyone's got any questions, just put your paw up and we get a microphone to you. Okay, 1, 2, 3.
How's it going? My name is Lork, and I'm in an electronic band called Lucy from Waterford. All of our stuff, the two lads, we produce and write all the stuff ourselves. Is it a good idea to, like, brand, say, a track, or use half a track before giving the full track away? Like, put a Lucy brand. We're called Lucy, so if we sold a track with a Lucy, with, say, Lucy in it every 16 bars, and then if they wanted to get it without that, they'd have to buy it. If that makes any sense.
Do you mean doing like a 30-second
like,
sample?
if we have our track, either have a half the track or have the full track.
Like a 30-second sample?
Yeah, or even put the full track and brand it, so like continuously you hear the name of the band in it.
Oh,
so then they
I
get a clean copy.
I think that's totally, like, that kind of, that's almost a bit like the promotional CDs that record labels send out to people, where it's halfway through the first track you are listening to a promotional CD. Do not steal this, and it goes on. And I tell you, speaking of I'm gonna, like, I know as a journalist, those CDs go out the back window, whoosh, like frisbees.
Yeah.
I don't think that'll work. Maybe I'm alone.
I think people find that annoying.
Yeah, and the format of gigging, we're an electronic band, so we can't really go into any Joe Schmo pub and play like alongside a band that are, excuse me, playing like guitars and real drums, because we're all electronic. Like, what way should we go? What path? Like, is it more getting into clubs, like that, specifying that, like, is it getting out of Ireland or going to places like Dublin and Cork? Or
research and find out exactly where them places are and what's in your area, and if there are similar bands. If there's nothing similar in your area in terms of that, why are you not putting on your own show? You invite your friends along and you build your own community, and that's your niche, and that's the people you can then sell to.
Yeah.
So in that situation, like, take the lead.
I spoke with a guy this morning during the speed sessions from Cork, and he was talking about the electronic scene there. He said it was non-existent 2 years ago because there was nowhere to play. So someone put on a night and said, hey, we're doing electronic music. He said bedroom producers came out of the woodwork, and all of a sudden it was like, holy shit, we have a great electronic experimental scene here in Cork.
Yeah.
It's kind of up and coming, really, though, because as you said, the whole bedroom artist kind of thing is kind of breaking out now, where people have all the means to play and the formats to play it on like that. It's a lot easier.
I mean, you might have to start small, but I think these guys have the right idea. Do your own night.
Yeah, exactly.
And the people will come.
Cool. Next one. Guy in the stripy short. Person in stripy top here. Sorry, I can't see. I can't actually. No, I just can see a stripy top.
Hi, my name is Aoife. I'm just curious, do the panel think that the day has passed where the majority of a musician's sales will come from records, from track sales? And what do you think the alternative is, or in terms of the balance, say, between gigs, merchandise, placement of music versus actual sales of tracks? And another second sneaky question, if I might. Does anyone on the panel have an example of someone who's doing the free agenda well?
Well, we can answer the second one first, in that I guess Frank Ocean's an excellent example. As we said earlier, he's given that away. Another artist called The Weeknd, who's
It's
now
amazing,
done,
check him out.
Yeah, done 2 whole albums that they've given away, and everyone's all over that. So that's two immediate examples. Going back to your first question, do I ever see that day? Well, you never know, I suppose is my answer. I don't really want to sit here and make a kind of concrete statement like I know, because I don't, and it's entirely possible. And I think as artists get bigger, there's probably an argument to which the revenues that they generate are proportionately growing in beyond the revenue. Not really phrasing that very well, am I? But you know what I mean. Like people like Lady Gaga probably earns a lot of money from endorsements, and and you get other artists like Pixie Lott who kind of. I went to this thing at Ogilvy, who are the really big ad agency, and it was like this big brand music thing. And someone there was saying that, which I didn't even know, which I was quite surprised about, was that apparently Pixie Lott is she sort of entirely designed. Everything about Pixie Lott is being carefully managed to make her appeal to as many brands as possible, which is why Pixie Lott sponsors fucking everything. She is, and I'm not joking. This is absolutely it. She has been designed to be mass appeal, so that everything she does, and if you then look and see what Pixie Lott lines herself up to, it is everything. So I would imagine Pixie Lott's revenue is probably infinitely greater from brands and all of these kinds of things than the actual sales, because they work very hard to develop a cult of celebrity around her, and you reach this point where we all know them, there's artists where you're sitting there going, why is everyone talking about you like you're still a singer? Jerry Halliwell's probably a good one, where a few years ago everyone talked about her and you're like, you've done no albums of worth mentioning, really. You're not an artist in that sense. You're just a celebrity now. So yeah, I mean the day may yet come. Sorry.
Yeah.
Cool.
No, in the U.S. it's the Black Eyed Peas, the exact same thing. Yeah. This is a band that I don't think anyone's like, when's their next album coming out? Yeah. It's all about doing.
Well, Black Eyed Peas can charge $50,000 for an after show party, of which maybe 1 or 2 of them will turn up, and you can bet it's the 1 or 2 you won't recognise. In terms of bands who've done the free agenda really well, I say the Cast of Cheers. That album's given away for free. First start, it was a great album, but it's got so much traction, and so many people mentioned that band to me, and I remember they played last year at the On the Record versus Not a 9 night at Hard Work Class Heroes, which is on again tonight, but they played last year at it, and people were going gaga for them because it was amazing. They've worked it really well, and I'm sure the next album won't be given away for free. But there's an example of a band who had who very much strategized what they were doing. Probably, if you say that to them now, you strategize what you're doing. They say, no, we didn't, but you did. They gave it away for free. They knew where they were seeding the album at the start, and it worked really well for them. In terms of kind of that split between in terms of revenue coming in, again, it varies from band to band. I mean, there's probably a lot of touring bands right now who earn so much from merch, absolutely shitloads from merch, but no one really knows about it, because merch is one of these great hidden things. Every band knows you gotta have merch, But the money you get into in merch, I mean, some of the deals I remember over the years talking to merchandise people, and they were offering advances which were better than the recording advances because they could recoup it on the road.
Motorhead are a perfect example of that. I remember someone telling me something like 60% of Motorhead's revenue is merch, and it's because Motorhead basically are now, they just sell all of their stuff through Amazon, and you can buy Motorhead merch anywhere. And it's a massive business for them. So they've far exceeded. People stopped buying Motorhead records years ago. But they just tour and do merch, and their shit looks cool, so everyone wears it, even if they've never heard a song.
Cool.
I remember reading a call, so like talking about merch. I remember hearing a call one other day talking about like strategies, and then we talked about strategies around a record campaign and having points. There was a fun Britney Spears one where instead of like having all her merch up at once, they had one item a day, and it was just limited for that day, and they like tripled the revenue in terms of merch coming through the web store. So just having a strategy in place of how you can do stuff like that is really cool, and how that can apply to your music as well. Like, it's all about strategy of how that, if you are giving free content, how it fits in within your long-term goal. And keep to that. And another point I'd say quickly is, like, talking about free music, there's loads of free tools on the web as well to make your life easier and create solutions around it. So stuff like using from like root music to BandRx on Facebook, to using like flavors to create a website really quickly, SoundCloud to get your music to bloggers embedded on their sites, and wherever you need to push it on the web. Take advantage of the free tools out there, because everyone's giving away a bit, so it works both ways.
Okay, time for maybe 1 or 2 more questions here at the back. Yeah, 5 more questions. Is the microphone there? Yeah.
Hi, from the bands that you've met during the speed sessions over the weekend, obviously a lot of the discussion today is about bands being clued in and having an idea of what they want to do, why they're doing it, and what they can achieve, and so on. So have you found that the bands that you've met are more clued up, or?
That's a very good question, because I remember 2 years ago here, having talked to panelists after speed sessions, and everyone going, those bands are idiots, they don't have a clue. But this time around, and I'm not putting you on the spot, but you've all said earlier on that the bands are a lot more, and the other panelists as well, seem to think the bands seem a bit more clued in.
They're proactive, I think, is a nice thing I've learned while I've been here, compared to being in London sometimes. It's kind of nice to have people, oh, cool, can I tell you about my band, and I'm trying to do this, and I'm doing this. The key word there is I. I really like that. They're being proactive in that sense, which I really enjoyed.
Yeah, I mean, I think, it's a fair spread. I mean, I think it's some of the bands I talked to weren't particularly clued in, but that's nice, because that's why they're here. So, as David says, the very fact that these people have come to do this, I think, shows that they're already on the case. And I would sort of reiterate, I mean, the thing I liked is just about every person I talked to was gigging a lot, and I thought that was lovely to see, because certainly, again, in London, that's sort of haven't really found that to be the case as much. It feels like in London, a lot of people try and just fall back a bit and take a kind of internet route. And ironically, I guess, given that I'm a digital marketing man, I actually quite like the fact that people gig, and try and make a more personal connection. I think it's a stronger point there. So, yeah, I think it was across the board. Some people I met, very savvy, very on it, great, and others less so, but that's fine.
Also, keep researching as well. Like, there's loads of great blogs out there to learn about music and digital marketing, like Hypebot, Music Ally as well. Any other ones you guys recommend as well, quickly? I'll just say that.
Any other blogs?
Sandbox.fm. If you want to feel like the end of the world is nigh, read Digital Music News, because that man doesn't have a positive angle on anything.
Sign up to Daily Core, the South Southwest daily news digest of really good music business stories.
Yeah, there's also a new one that the Music Ally guys have launched called AppSide, appside.com, I think, and that's actually a slightly broader thing, but in my job I found it really good, because it's not just music, it's also apps and kind of technology and brands and stuff like that. And I know that can sound a little bit dry, but it's just very interesting to see what people do. And I'm always curious to see what big brands do, because the bottom line is they've got a hell of a lot of money, so they can often innovate because they can afford to. They can throw a boatload of money at stuff. So that's another good one. It's a free email. Do that. I'm trying to think if there's any others.
On the record.
I've not heard of that one.
Fuck you.
I think talking about being clued up is very much a personal opinion, a personal point of view on it, because I'm several years younger than quite a few of the bands I spoke to, and I imagine my outlook is quite a lot different. It's quite a bit different to their outlook. I've grown up through just downloading pretty much everything for free. I've very rarely ever paid for anything in terms of the actual MP3. I think in terms of kind of developing a strategy as well, I mean, talking about band gigging as much as possible, bizarrely, in London, there's quite a few bands now playing the whole kind of Woo Life sort of mysterious kind of doing a not
Because that's now a thing. That's now a strategy.
yeah, and it's not they don't really play that many gigs. You got Theme Park, who played their first ever show. What
Yeah,
was it,
they were,
a
they,
month
and
back?
they've got a really good booking agent like Jason Edwards already on the case.
Yeah, and their show, sold out show, people queuing up and down the street to get in. You've got the same with Manchester band Christian AIDS, who now changed their name to Stay Plus. They were very much the same. They have this pretty kind of similar Woo-Lef sort of strategy, but yeah, I think adopting a strategy is important as a band, but also everyone knows how fast things change, and don't kind of think, right, in a year from now, this is where we need to be as a band, because it's probably not going to turn out that way. And there's going to be so many other factors over the course of a year that will change and that will ensure that you don't reach the exact point that you maybe might have down in your calendar. So I think being kind of malleable to what is going on around you is a very important aspect of getting your music heard and getting your music out there.
Cool. Okay, thank you very much. I think we leave it at that. We've run out of time. I'd like to thank all the panelists for their patience and for their inputs. Thank you very much. And I'd like to thank all of you as well for coming out today as well. Don't forget that it has been taped. It will be on HWCH11. All last year's podcasts got great traffic. We know these will get great traffic as well. I'd like to say thanks very much to Angela Dorban for asking me to do this. I'd like a big thanks to Culture Ireland for kind of funding this and looking after it. There's one last hard working class heroes convention happening, and that's the band tips with the festival bookers from South West, Eurosonic and other festivals, which is happening across the road in Film Base in about half an hour. And if you're going gigging tonight, the only place to be is the Workman's Club for the On The Record versus Night Night. Thank you very much.